responsibility to resist the injustices done by our government in our names. We pledge to bring about
Welcome to another episode of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. This is a very special episode. It's our bicentennial episode, the episode 200 of Anarchast. And as well, we just passed 1 million views on YouTube, so a lot of milestones happening. And as well, we just finished our first international anarcho-capitalist conference called Anarchapoko. And on the Twitter, which I hear all the kids are using nowadays, I saw a post by Right Said Fred that said, this looks great, we wish we could make it. And so I contacted them, and they were incredibly nice guys, and they had a lot of questions. We talked about government, and they said how they don't like government. And I said, well, I think you're an anarchist. He's still not sure about it, but he is a voluntarist. He's sure about that. He believes that he personally, he doesn't aggress against others. He uses violence against others. So we're going to get into all that. We have Fred Fairbrass of the very famous Right Said Fred on today. And the first question I'm going to have to ask you, Fred, is how did you become a voluntarist?
I don't know. I think I just slipped into it. I think what happened is with the music industry is a very controlling environment, and I think it's a result of that, because we've always been independent artists, so that's been a plus. But when you're in the environment, when you have a big hit, have big records, it is a very controlling environment, and I understand why. I mean, we didn't enjoy the fame game. We tried to back out of it as quickly as we possibly could, and many artists do, and I don't blame them. It's not the way personally we want to run our lives. So
yeah, a lot of your songs, of course, the first one that really hit was "I'm Too Sexy,"
yeah, it was,
and I'm not gonna bring up too many "I'm Too Sexy" jokes. I'm sure you've heard them all.
We've heard most,
but sort of the point of that song, in my opinion, was you're sort of making fun of the celebrity industry,
yes.
And then you also had another track after that talking about celebrities, and,
yes, yes.
You're always poking fun at them. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, because it's smoke and mirrors. There is, I remember when we first got our first platinum album, and it hadn't gone platinum. What happened was it coincided with a big TV show, so it suited the record company to give us to present us with a platinum record. It was going to go platinum, but it wasn't platinum at that time. And then when we started being described as, after 3 weeks in the charts, we were suddenly described as multi-millionaire pop stars, and I just, the whole thing just was quite ludicrous. And we just thought, this fame game, and when you're around other artists and you see how they act, and the manipulation that they think they're in control, which is really funny, because clearly they're not. And that's quite amusing. But also, there's just a lot of egos around, and if you've been surrounded by more serious things, our mum has Alzheimer's. My brother-in-law passed away after a very, very long illness. He was ill for over 20 years. He had a stroke, and then he had cancer. And when you see more important things going on, the industry is fairly ridiculous. It's fun, and if you can take it at that, it's great. But unfortunately, it takes itself very seriously.
Yeah, of course, there's people like Kanye West who
yes.
He can rap a little bit, so he thinks he's Jesus.
Yes, seemingly he does. Yes, yeah, which is a bit of a worry. But then it's just not that important. And I do the whole thing after. Was it when he was rude about Beck or somebody? I mean, really, does it matter? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people get really whipped up with their egos, and a lot of people that I really like are the people that are really successful, including people like yourself and people like South Park, the guys from South Park. Yeah. I've met with them in Hollywood numerous times, and they just make fun of all the celebrities. Paris Hilton will be there, like pulling pranks on her and stuff. They don't take themselves too seriously, and I find those are the best kind of people.
Yeah, I don't think you can take it. It's just there's too many serious things in the world going on for this to be taken seriously. Yeah, and we're very lucky. We make a very good living out in the industry, and we for that we're grateful. But we can't. We've always remained independent because we just can't play that other major record company game. We'll go insane.
Yeah, and I know you're still you put out a lot of albums, and I know you're quite popular in the dance scene and things like that. What are you up to lately?
We've got involved in movies. We've got 2 movies coming out this year. One's being screened at Cannes in May. That's called Meet Pursuit de l'Ange. That is a British comedy. We're acting in it. We've written some film score for it. And then there's a US independent comedy horror. I think that's being screened at the Toronto Film Festival. That's called I Had a Bloody Good Time at House Harker. And that's like a zombie movie, and we've written a couple of songs for that. And then we've got about 3 other movies in production. And we run a dance label in LA, and we still do a bunch of shows. So,
wow,
yeah,
keep 'em busy.
Yeah, we're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. A lot of the people, you said to me earlier that you're into alternative media,
yes.
And a lot of people talk about the music industry and about the Illuminati and all these one-eyed symbols that all these Lady Gaga and everyone's doing.
Yes.
What's your take on that, and what have you seen in the music industry?
Well, I don't take much notice of the sort of imagery that Lady Gaga used. I'm not a fan of what she does. I saw that Madonna was using it as well. Whether the Illuminati, it may be present in the music industry. It may well be. We've always been an independent artist. We've never signed with Universal or Warner's, and so we've never been in that in those sort of those sort of circles. We've always been worked at a lower level. So maybe we're below the Illuminati radar. I don't know. But I don't take much notice of it. I mean, I think the industry is a very poor industry compared to movies, compared to the sports industry or whatever. There's not a great deal of money floating around in the music industry anymore. It's a lot of it is icing on the cake,
Yeah, and it's changed a lot, of course, since you've started
Yes.
with the internet and iTunes and downloads and things like that. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, I have experience from the point of view that when we put out Sexy, we were selling 100,000 records a day in the US. And those days are gone, pretty much. There may be, you'll get the occasional record, maybe like Adele or something that will buck the trend. But generally speaking, you have to make your money. Your record is your lost leader, and then which is why people do books and perfumes and sportswear and clotheswear and movies and blah blah blah.
Concerts.
Yep, concerts. And everyone says, "Oh, go and do a concert." There's lots of money, but then the world and his wife is on the road. Everybody wants to do a concert.
Yeah.
So,
it's really interesting what's going on because
yeah.
I've been around the music industry. I was actually the number 2 white rapper in Canada in 1989, and
Hey!
and then I actually before I knew I was an anarchist, around 2003 I started an anti-piracy company just because I'm a capitalist as well. I'm an anarcho-capitalist, so I like to make money.
Yeah.
I also like to make money because I like having fun and making successful things and having creating wealth as well and creating great things. So around 2003, I started something called Protected by Covenants, and I was trying to help record industries stop downloading pirated music on the internet. Now I'm an anarchist, so I don't really believe in IP, intellectual property. I don't believe the government should be enforcing what people can download. And of course, just recently in the news was this crazy story about Pharrell and Marvin Gaye about a song.
Yes.
They had this really crappy song. It was like, I
Blurred
forget
Lines.
what it was.
Blurred Lines.
Yeah, Blurred Lines.
Yes.
It was really horrible, but somehow it caught on. And then Marvin Gaye, of course, got really hurt by it. Of course, he's dead, but he got really hurt by it that they kind of like used a few of his sort of swings or his beats or whatever, and they sort of incorporated that into their song. And then his family sued them, and they won $7 million recently, which really could turn the music industry upside down. Because if that's the case, then Bo Diddley could pretty much sue, or Bo Diddley's family, his grandkids, could sue pretty much every artist in the world for copying some of his style.
Absolutely, and Chuck Berry. And then,
Chuck Berry.
Then you've got Berry Gordy. He could probably go and throw a few lawsuits around. And then you'd have to look at Black Sabbath because they pretty much started the whole heavy metal movement. You'd have to go and look at them. So yeah, there'd be a few.
Bob Marley for reggae.
Bob Marley for reggae. That's true. Bob Dylan might have Bob Dylan and the Woody Guthrie Foundation might have a few things to say about that.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's why I started bringing up anarchy quite a bit. Of course, this is an anarchy show, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because when you get government involved, and that's how all these IP laws are all government enforced.
Right.
You wouldn't have this in a free market society. You wouldn't have Marvin Gaye's family knocking on Pharrell's door saying, "Hey, it sounds like your song sounds a lot like a song that my dad did like 30 or 40 years ago. I want $7 million. Pharrell would be like, well, beat it. But with the government, it just gets all crazy.
Yes, it does. I think they're going to appeal, and I think they might win the appeal. I'm not convinced this is going to actually manifest in any dollars being swapped over. I'm not convinced it will, but we'll see. But it is, it's very difficult because I think the copyright law with melody and chords is 7 notes over 4 bars. I think it might be right. Also, we were sued on a thing that's called access, which is someone could have access to your idea while you're writing it, and they could, through that access, influence your idea. So the kid walks in the studio with his tea and, oh, what about if you try B flat there or whatever, And we actually got sued on that, and we won, but we lost because you have to pay the lawyers.
Yeah,
so,
the lawyers always win in these.
Of course they do. Yeah, it's a pretty futile and a waste of time. Life's too precious to run around courts and lawyers. And
it's that's again the government related stuff creates all these problems. And I know we were talking earlier that you're not sure if you're an anarchist because you don't know enough about the philosophy. But when we were talking on Twitter, you were saying that pretty much everything I've been saying you kind of agree with. Yes. So just to let you know, anarchy is just a word that means it's a Greek word. It just means "an" without archy, rulers. Right. It doesn't mean no rules. It means no rulers. And what it really means is you don't want anyone to own you, to control you, to make you do things through violence, which is all government does.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on anything about that.
Well, I do. But my brother and I had a very interesting experience on Saturday. We did a festival in Germany, and we flew out of Terminal 5 at Heathrow. And you take your belt off and the usual nonsense that goes on, this fiasco that's stopping terrorists and all that stuff. so we did that, and then you walk through the thing, and we both pinged. And I don't know why the thing went off. And the guy said, you have to go through the body scanner, when you stand like this. So I said, I'm not doing that. I don't trust it. There's no, and I've looked into this before, there's no evidence, particularly for frequent flyers, that says it's safe. It's safe for people who fly maybe 2 or 3 times a year on holidays and stuff. But for frequent flyers, the jury is still out. So we said, we're not going through your body scanner. He said, then I must tell you, you are now a person of interest. And you are a threat. Yeah, really. You are a person of interest, and you've now been recognised as a threat. And you have to sit here and wait for someone to come along and talk to you. So they make you sit there for an hour because they want to annoy you, and then they want to take my guitar apart and all that stuff out and blah blah blah. But it was very interesting. All we were doing was exercising our right, which is saying we weren't refusing to be searched, but we are refusing to use your machine. And at that point, because we didn't play ball, we're the problem, as opposed to the machine being the problem. Yes.
Yeah, it's all about submission.
Yes.
They're trying to just make people submit to their power.
Yeah.
And of course, the airport or the airlines can run their own security, no problem. There's no one who has a bigger interest in making sure that their planes don't blow up than the airlines. But to have the government come in, which is just some bureaucrat, usually some fat 40-year-old who's obviously, I don't know how they get into these jobs. They must be just, I heard in the US they were advertising for TSA on the bottom of pizza box covers, which makes sense when you see them. I don't know where these slime balls come from, and they have no control in their own lives. No one respects them in their own lives because they've never done anything and they're useless. And so they like that power of being able to take Right Said Fred and make them sit down for an hour. And I feel like a real man now. Just to let you know, I've looked into those body scanner things, and they don't look very safe to me. They look like microwave machines to me.
Yes.
And I never go through them. I've never gone through one. And I'll give you a little tip. And don't do it with your brother right behind you, because if 2 people do it in a row, they'll catch on. Okay. Just say that you broke your, you put your shoulder out of place or something, and you can't lift your arm up, and they just open up the regular metal detector and they just let you walk through. I've done it like 50 plus times now.
That's a very good. I've got to fly next week out of the same airport, same terminal. So I might well do that. Be careful. Yeah.
Just be careful about it, because I did it once in the U.S. and I had a Wired reporter from Wired magazine follow me around for a Bitcoin story, and he was right behind me, and I winked at him. I said, "Watch this," and I walked up. I said, "I can't lift my arm," and they just opened up the metal detector, and I just walked through. And when I went through, I kind of smiled back at him, and he smiled back at me, and the TSA people saw it, and he heard the TSA people say, "Watch that guy. If he lifts his arm over his head, we're taking him down." So I didn't lift my arm over my head until I got out of the U.S.
That's very very funny. But I just think so.
Yeah.
I just like I didn't want to be rude to the guy who's just doing his job, but I tried to explain. Are you really telling me there's this really sort of radicalized cell, and they're not gonna try and get through your security system because you've got 8 people there who've all had at least 8 hours training, and you're all wearing high-vis jackets? Is this what is going to foil this? And I just thought, oh, come on, this is just ludicrous, man. It made no sense at all. So
yeah, it totally is, and that's just another thing about government. Government is just constantly causing problems in our lives.
It is,
and that's So you were mentioning to me that you agreed, like with a lot of my anti-government stuff. You said you don't like government much either. Do you have any other thoughts on government?
Well, I think it's just there was a woman arrested in I think it's 2007. I can't remember her name now. Maya Evans, Maya Evans may be her name, and she went down to Pall Mall, Whitehall, which is where our Prime Minister lives. He lives in the Prime Minister lives in Downing Street, and used to better walk right into Downing Street. But since Thatcher came along, she put all these iron gates up, and now it's all this secure zone. And this woman sat down in Whitehall and read read the names of all the dead soldiers from the Iraq conflict and Afghanistan, and she was arrested. She was a terrorist threat, and she was arrested. And I think when you get a government that is so petrified of this single female reading out a bunch of names, you really are seeing them for what they are, which is puppets and knee-jerk reactions and just these bogus laws, really. I mean, everything under the Terrorist Act, just to, there's this. It's not an invisible enemy, but it's an enemy that's incredibly convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. Government is always government in itself is a criminal organization. They use violence against other people to enforce their arbitrary laws, which aren't real laws. Anything that has no victim is not a crime, and they're constantly putting people in cages for having a flower in their pocket called marijuana, or not having a seatbelt, or collecting rainwater in the U.S., or feeding homeless people, and of course they're all financed through theft, which is called taxes.
Yes.
And so they get really paranoid when people start to wake up to this, and people are waking up. So there's a real sort of struggle going on right now between the government trying to retain control over people and people waking up and saying, this is ridiculous. 99% of what government does is completely ridiculous and criminal. Maybe 1% is not too bad or whatever, but it's still financed by theft, and it should be financed through voluntary transactions. So you can definitely see they're getting quite paranoid now, and there's going to be something happening in the next few years. We're seeing in Ferguson with people.
Absolutely.
Amazing story there in Ferguson. That I think there's like 5,000 people in Ferguson, and there's something like 4,500 arrest warrants out for people in Ferguson. So literally everyone there is like being searched for to be put in jail.
Absolutely.
Probably for drinking a beer outside or something. And people are starting to get a little upset about it. And
it's
so
ridiculous.
A big part of
There was a big. Sorry, go ahead. No, I was watching a thing on YouTube. These 4 guys with the anonymous masks decided to deliver a petition down to the Ministry of Defence in London, and they were stopped by the police because they were an unlicensed protest. There's 4 of them. This is not a demonstration on a march, but eventually the policemen actually saw sense of it. Okay, just go on your way. And also the guys with the masks, they knew the law. They knew exactly what they were allowed to do and weren't allowed to do. And it was just non-compliance, which I think is exactly how it should be. And now we've got our most senior policeman in the UK is suggesting we have. That homeowners are encouraged to have surveillance TV cameras in their house. I mean, really, Orwell must just be looking down and going, what? I told you, it is very worrying, and sorry, just very quickly, my brother and I were discussing taxes today because we bought petrol and we bought something to eat, and in the UK we have a thing called VAT, which years ago when it was invented was value-added tax. It was for high-end goods. Buy a new car that is particular value or hi-fi, so luxury goods. Anyway, it's on everything now, as you'd expect. And it's now 20%. 20% on money you've already paid tax on.
Yeah, it gets really insane when you start adding up all the tax.
Yeah, that's stealth tax. And they still run at a loss. They still have huge debts. I despair.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's going to end because all these governments are totally bankrupt.
Yes, they are.
And the U.S. government, the U.K. government, and you brought up the George Orwell in the U.K. It's almost like they're using his book as a manual nowadays.
It's the manifesto.
People don't even really see it. Like in London, I think there's like a CCTV camera for like 1 in every 2 people or something like that, or 1 in every 9 people, something like that.
Yeah, it is. I think it's 1 in every 11 actually, but
11.
Yeah,
okay.
but nevertheless, that's far too much.
And now they want them in your homes.
Yes, and the police have them
just to keep you safe, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, and I really need them to keep me safe. Yeah, and I just find people are just throwing away their liberty and their privacy rights because they want to be kept safe. No one can keep you safe. It's impossible.
Yeah, if you want to be totally safe and have no guns, just go to jail.
Yes, exactly.
And you'd be totally safe.
Yeah,
totally safe.
And life is full of risk. It just is. It just is. You know.
That's right. And people have been so sort of indoctrinated and brainwashed, mostly through public education, indoctrination camps, 12 years of it, to really, and through the mainstream media, to fear so many things. It's just fear, 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 fear. And it really makes people clamor for more security.
Yes.
But what they're actually getting is a real police state that is just becoming worse and worse.
Yeah, well, I'm amazed you've got these people who are actually lining up to have the microchip. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, do you not get what this means? I think it's amazing that people they still trust the authority, even though clearly they are corrupt and incapable and incompetent, you know, but they still do.
Yeah, when you look at biblical prophecy, it's quite amazing. First of all, Jesus was an anarchist by his actions, and then in the Bible it was saying things like people will be marked, the mark of the beast,
yes,
and that's how they're going to control us. And actually, a lot of Jesus' story was warning you about governments, and Jesus was always trying to get rid of tax collectors, and
yes, that's true.
So he was trying to spread that message. And nowadays, there's a lot of Christians, but they love government and they love the chip, and it's everything's just been flipped.
Yeah, it has. Well, but money lenders for centuries were frowned upon because they were just taking advantage of people who were in impossible situations, and they were just exploiting that. And now they get bonuses. I mean, it's like, wow, okay, how does that work? I mean.
And not to mention the banks get, through the government, the legal right to fractional reserve banking, which means that they can just print up as much money as they want. When you go to a bank and you get a loan, you're not getting someone else's money lent to you. They just press a button on the computer and they charge you an interest rate, and that's how they make their money. And they can do that all through the government systems. It's all totally, it would never happen in the free market. Or if it did happen, it ended very quickly as people figured out what was going on. Yeah. So we really need to wake people up. So I'm so glad you came on. So glad that you reached out to us on the Twitter. And if you know any other artists that are sort of freedom-minded, please let us know. And anyone watching, please let us know. I know there's so many very, very anarchist-sounding artists, including people like Lupe Fiasco, a lot of rappers actually, KRS-One, a number of them. There's Immortal Technique. These are all rappers, but there's a lot of people. So anyone watching, if you know any of these people, please show them this episode and let them know that we need to get more of the people that people have heard of, people like Right Said Fred, because that's who people sort of listen to. They might not know about this theory or philosophy of what we're trying to do, trying to make the world a more peaceful and prosperous place by making all transactions voluntary. So the more that we can get more celebrities on, the better. So I'd like to thank you, Fred. Sure. And if there's anything you want to let us know about what you're doing, any upcoming concerts or albums or your movies, let us know.
Just to check out the new British movie, Meet Pursuit de l'Ange, that's coming out in the summer. And in America, I had a bloody good time at House Harker. I think that's an autumn, fall, winter release. So they're the main two projects at the moment. And there is no autobiography. We've just signed a book deal, but that won't be for probably next year sometime.
Wow, keep him busy. That's great. So definitely check all that stuff out. Great guys. And that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and